The rumble of the 18-wheeler's engine had become Jack Foster's heartbeat over the years. At 56, he knew every vibration, every sound his old truck made as it devoured mile after mile of American asphalt. The leather seat, worn smooth by countless hours behind the wheel, had molded itself to his frame like a second skin. His calloused hands gripped the steering wheel with the confidence of someone who had made the road his home, his sanctuary, and his prison all at once. Lightning, as he was known among fellow truckers on the CB radio, had earned his nickname not for speed, but for his ability to navigate through the worst storms. Tonight, however, the radio remained silent. It had been silent for weeks now, ever since he'd decided that the chatter of strangers only amplified the emptiness that had settled in his chest like concrete. The Interstate 10 stretched endlessly before him, a ribbon of black cutting through the desert between Las Cruces and El Paso. The dashboard clock glowed 3:47 a.m., and the world outside existed in shades of deep blue and silver, stars scattered across the sky like forgotten dreams. And Jack found himself reaching unconsciously for the small St. Jude medal hanging from his rearview mirror. His wife, Sarah, had given it to him on their wedding day, 28 years ago. "For protection on the road," she had whispered, pressing the medal into his palm, "so you'll always come home to me." But Sarah was gone now, had been for 3 years, and home had become just another word that had lost its meaning. The medal swayed gently with each curve of the highway, catching the occasional streetlight and throwing tiny rainbows across the windshield. Jack touched it briefly, a ritual he performed without thinking, a prayer without words. The heater hummed softly, fighting against the desert's surprising chill. January nights in New Mexico could fool you, appearing mild during the day only to bite with unexpected cold once the sun disappeared. Jack adjusted the temperature and took a sip from his thermos of coffee, now lukewarm and bitter, but still better than nothing. It was then that he saw her. At first, he thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. After 18 hours on the road, the mind could conjure all sorts of phantoms, but as his headlights swept around a gentle curve, the figure became undeniably real. A woman walked along the shoulder of the highway, her silhouette small and determined against the vast darkness. Something bulky rode on her back, what looked like a guitar case or backpack, maybe both. Jack's foot instinctively moved toward the brake pedal, then hesitated. Every trucker knew the cardinal rule: don't stop for hitchhikers. Too many stories, too many risks. The road was full of people running from something, and more often than not, that something had a way of following them into your cab, into your life. But something about this woman gave him pause. Maybe it was the way she walked, not frantically, not desperately, but with a quiet dignity that spoke of someone who had already made peace with whatever had brought her to this lonely stretch of highway. Her stride was steady, purposeful, as if she knew exactly where she was going, even though the nearest town was still 20 miles away. Jack's conscience, a voice that sounded suspiciously like Sarah's, whispered in his ear, "What if that was me out there, Jack? What if that was someone's daughter, someone's mother?" The truck began to slow, its air brakes hissing softly. Jack pulled onto the shoulder about 50 yards ahead of the walking figure, his hazard lights painting the asphalt in amber pulses. He sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel, questioning his decision. Through his side mirror, he watched her approach cautiously, her steps more hesitant now. When she reached the passenger door, Jack could see her more clearly through the window. She was young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Her clothes were simple but clean: jeans, a worn denim jacket, and boots that had seen better days. The guitar case on her back was old, but well-maintained, its leather straps darkened with age and use. What struck him most were her eyes. Even in the dim light, reflected from his cab, he could see they held the kind of weariness that didn't come from walking. It came from carrying invisible weight. the kind that pressed down on your shoulders long before your feet ever touched the pavement. Jack rolled down the passenger window and leaned toward it. "You okay out here, miss?" She studied his face for a long moment, her hand instinctively adjusting the strap of her guitar case. "I'm fine, thank you," she said, her voice carrying a slight tremor that could have been from cold or nerves. "Just heading toward Sierra Vista." "That's still a good 40 miles, Jack said gently. "Pretty cold night for walking." She looked down the dark highway, then back at him. Something passed across her face, a flicker of vulnerability quickly masked by determination. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm okay." Jack nodded, understanding her caution. In her position, he'd be wary too. "Name's Jack Foster," he offered. "I'm heading through Sierra Vista on my way to Tucson. If you'd like a ride, you're welcome to it. No strings attached." The woman's eyes searched his face again, looking for something, honesty. Perhaps or the absence of threat. Whatever she found seemed to satisfy her, at least partially. "Emily," she said simply. "Emily Parker." "Well, Emily Parker, you're welcome to think it over. I'll be here for another minute or two if you change your mind." Emily shifted the guitar case higher on her shoulder and looked once more down the empty highway. The wind picked up, sending a chill through the air that made her pull her jacket tighter. When she looked back at Jack, something in her expression had shifted. "If it's not too much trouble," she said quietly, "I'd appreciate the lift." Jack reached across and opened the passenger door, the cab's interior light flooding the space between them. "No trouble at all." Emily climbed up into the cab with practiced efficiency, settling her guitar case carefully in the sleeper compartment behind the seats. She buckled her seatbelt and folded her hands in her lap, her posture suggesting someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. "Thank you," she said as Jack pulled back onto the highway. "Really? I wasn't sure I'd make it before sunrise." Jack nodded and adjusted his mirrors. "Sometimes the road surprises you," he said, not quite sure why he'd chosen those particular words. As they accelerated back to highway speed, he couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was going to change something fundamental about his carefully ordered, solitary existence. Chapter 2. Broken Melodies. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us what city you're watching from. Let's continue. The silence inside the cab stretched between Jack and Emily like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. The truck's engine provided a steady rhythm, a mechanical lullaby that seemed to ease some of the tension in Emily's shoulders. Jack kept his eyes on the road, occasionally glancing at his passenger through the corner of his vision. Emily sat perfectly still, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, watching the desert landscape roll by in the pre-dawn darkness. Every few minutes, she would unconsciously reach back to touch her guitar case, as if reassuring herself it was still there. The gesture reminded Jack of how he touched Sarah's medal, a reflexive comfort, a connection to something precious. "You play professionally?" Jack asked finally, breaking the quiet with genuine curiosity rather than obligation. Emily's fingers stiffened slightly. "Not exactly," she said, her voice barely audible above the engine's hum. I used to dream about it, I suppose. Now it's just..." She trailed off, searching for words that seemed to elude her. Just survival," Jack offered gently. Emily turned to look at him then, surprise flickering across her features. Something in his tone, perhaps the understanding rather than judgment, seemed to catch her off guard. "Something like that," she admitted. Jack nodded, returning his attention to the highway. He understood survival, understood the way dreams could transform into necessities, how hope could become as practical as food and shelter. My wife used to say that music was like breathing. You don't think about it until you can't do it anymore. The mention of his wife created another pause, and Emily seemed to sense the weight behind his words. "Used to?" she asked softly. "She passed 3 years ago." Jack said simply. The words came easier now than they had in the beginning, though they still carried their familiar ache. Cancer. I'm sorry, Emily said, and Jack could hear genuine empathy in her voice. That must have been difficult. Jack's hand unconsciously went to the St. Jude medal. She was the music in our house. After she was gone, it just got quiet. They fell back into silence, but it felt different now, less awkward, more companionable. The sky was beginning to lighten almost imperceptibly, the deep black giving way to the faintest hint of indigo. Stars were fading one by one, as if someone was slowly dimming the lights of the universe. I have a daughter, Emily said suddenly, the words seeming to surprise even her. Lily, she's 4. Jack felt something shift in his chest. Where is she now? With a neighbor back in Villa Grove, Mrs. Rodriguez. She's been watching her while I tried to figure things out. Emily's voice grew smaller with each word. I know how that sounds. I know what people think about mothers who leave their children, even temporarily. I'm not people, Jack said quietly. And I don't think anything except that you're probably doing the best you can with whatever situation you're in. Emily's eyes filled with tears she didn't let fall. Her father, my ex, he's not a good man. Controlling doesn't begin to describe it. He made it impossible for us to stay, but he also made it impossible for us to leave together. At least this way, she's safe while I try to establish something somewhere else. Jack absorbed this information, understanding beginning to form a clearer picture. So Sierra Vista is your fresh start. Hopefully. I heard there's a small park there where street musicians perform. I thought maybe I could earn enough to send for Lily, get us a small place. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. It sounds pathetic when I say it out loud. It sounds brave, Jack corrected. Scary as hell, probably, but brave. Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm barely holding on most days. Sometimes that's the same thing, Jack said. My Sarah used to say that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. As they talked, the sun began to paint the horizon with tentative strokes of orange and pink. The desert came alive in the early light, revealing its hidden beauty, the way shadows played between rocks, the unexpected delicacy of desert flowers that most people never slowed down enough to notice. Tell me about Lily, Jack found himself saying. What's she like? Emily's entire demeanor changed. Her shoulders relaxed, and for the first time since entering the truck, she smiled genuinely. She's incredible. Smart as a whip, funny in ways that surprise me every day. She loves to draw, everywhere, on everything. I'm constantly finding little pictures tucked into my pockets or taped to the bathroom mirror. Sounds like an artist in the making, Jack observed. Maybe. She certainly has the soul for it. She sees things differently than other kids her age. When I play guitar, she'll sit and listen like she understands every note, every emotion. Sometimes I think she hears things in the music that I don't even know I'm putting there. Jack could picture it. A small girl with her mother's eyes, sitting cross-legged on the floor while Emily played. The image stirred something in him that had been dormant for too long. How long has it been since you've seen her? He asked. 2 weeks, Emily whispered. 2 weeks, 3 days, and about 6 hours. But who's counting? She attempted another smile. But it wavered. Mrs. Rodriguez calls me every evening to let me talk to her. Lily always asks when I'm coming home, and I keep telling her soon, but you're not sure what soon means yet, Jack finished. Exactly. Emily stared out the window at the passing landscape. I keep thinking I should have figured out a different way, a better way, but I couldn't see any other options. Jack was quiet for several minutes, processing her story. Finally, he said, you know, Sierra Vista's a nice enough town, but it's small. Street performing might be hit or miss, especially this time of year. Emily's face fell slightly. You think I'm making a mistake? I didn't say that. Jack said quickly. I'm just thinking out loud. There might be other opportunities there, cafes, small venues, churches maybe, places that need regular musicians rather than depending on foot traffic. Hope flickered in Emily's eyes. Do you think so? I think a woman willing to walk 40 miles on a desert highway in January to give her daughter a better life is probably resourceful enough to figure it out, Jack said. Question is, what happens when you do? How do you get Lily to you? Emily's shoulders sagged again. I haven't gotten that far yet. One step at a time, I guess. As they crested a small hill, the lights of Sierra Vista became visible in the distance, twinkling like earthbound stars against the dawn sky. Emily sat up straighter, her hands unconsciously smoothing her hair. Almost there, Jack announced, though something in his voice suggested he wasn't entirely pleased about reaching their destination. Chapter 3. A Place to Call Home. Sierra Vista awakened slowly around them as Jack guided his truck through the quiet streets. The town stretched modest and unpretentious in the morning light, with small businesses beginning to show signs of life. A few early risers walked dogs along sidewalks lined with desert-adapted trees, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted from a corner cafe. Emily pressed her face closer to the window, taking in everything with the intensity of someone memorizing a map. This would be her new world, at least for now. And Jack could see her trying to imagine herself walking these streets, perhaps with a guitar case slung over her shoulder and hope in her heart. The park's just up ahead, Jack said, pointing to a small green space visible between two buildings. Not much to look at, but it's got shade and benches. Good acoustics too, from what I've heard. As they approached the park, Emily's optimism seemed to deflate slightly. In daylight, it looked smaller than she'd probably imagined. And at this early hour, it was completely empty, except for a few pigeons pecking at crumbs near a bench. Jack pulled over and put the truck in park, but neither of them moved to get out. The silence stretched between them again, but this time it carried the weight of an ending neither seemed prepared for. I should probably let you get on with your route, Emily said finally, though she made no move toward the door handle. Yeah, Jack agreed, but his hands remained on the steering wheel. Probably should. Emily reached back for her guitar case, pulling it carefully into her lap. Thank you, Jack. Really? I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't stopped. You'd have figured something out, he said. You strike me as the type who always does. Emily opened the door but paused before stepping down. I hope your wife was right about the St. Jude medal. I hope it keeps bringing you home safely. Something in her words hit Jack unexpectedly hard. Home. When had he stopped thinking of anywhere as home? When had the road become not just his job, but his entire existence? Emily, he said suddenly, the words coming out before he could stop them. Look, I don't know your situation entirely, and I'm not in the habit of getting involved. But I've got a small place about 20 minutes from here. Nothing fancy. But there's a spare room, and it's got to be better than sleeping in the park. Emily froze, one foot on the running board, one still in the cab. I couldn't impose. It's not imposing if it's offered, Jack interrupted. And before you say anything else, I'm not looking for anything in return. I know what it's like to be alone and trying to figure things out. Sometimes having a safe place to sleep makes all the difference. Emily's eyes filled with tears again, but these seemed different from the ones she'd shed earlier. Why would you do that? You don't even know me. Jack was quiet for a moment, considering the question himself. Maybe because someone once told me that kindness is just love with no place to go. Maybe because I've got more space than I know what to do with. Or maybe because I think your little girl deserves to have her mama somewhere safe while she figures out how to bring her home. The mention of Lily seemed to decide it for Emily. She pulled her leg back into the cab and closed the door. Are you sure? I'm sure, Jack said, though part of him wondered what he was getting himself into. We'll get you settled. and then you can check out the town properly. See what opportunities are actually available. As they drove through Sierra Vista toward Jack's place, Emily seemed to relax incrementally. The town looked more welcoming now, more full of possibilities. They passed a small diner with a "Help Wanted" sign in the window, a music store with guitars displayed behind dusty glass, and a community center with a bulletin board covered in colorful flyers. "It's not a big city," Jack said, noticing her attention to the surroundings, "but it's got good people, the kind who'll give you a chance if you're willing to work for it." Jack's house sat on a quiet street lined with modest homes, each with its own small yard and character. His was a simple ranch-style building with faded blue siding and a covered porch that looked like it had seen better days. A workshop stood separate from the main house, its doors currently closed. "It's perfect," Emily said as they pulled into the driveway, and Jack could tell she meant it. Inside, the house reflected its owner, functional, clean, but with a palpable sense of emptiness. The living room held a worn couch, a coffee table stacked with trucking magazines, and a television that looked like it rarely got used. Family photos lined the mantel above a fireplace that appeared cold and unused. "The spare room's back here," Jack said, leading her down a short hallway. "Used to be my wife's sewing room. It's got a bed and a dresser, nothing fancy, but it's private." The room was small but clean, with afternoon light streaming through sheer curtains. A single bed was made up with a faded quilt, and a small dresser sat against one wall. But what caught Emily's attention was the sewing machine in the corner, still set up as if its owner had just stepped away for a moment. "Breed, you don't have to move anything," Emily said quickly. "I don't want to disturb." "It's fine," Jack said, though his voice carried a slight strain. "Sarah would have wanted it used. She never could stand the idea of empty rooms." Emily set her guitar case carefully beside the bed and turned to face him. "Jack, I want you to know that I'm not running from the law or anything like that. I'm just running from a situation that wasn't good for me or for Lily." "I figured as much," Jack said. "And for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. It takes guts to leave everything behind for a chance at something better." "I hope you're right," Emily said. "I really hope you're right." That evening, as Jack prepared for another run that would take him away for several days, he found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, worrying about what he was leaving behind. Emily had spent the afternoon walking through town, returning with a small bag of groceries and a tentative smile. "I talked to the owner of that cafe we passed," she told him over a simple dinner of sandwiches and soup. "He said he might have some work washing dishes, and he's not opposed to live music on weekends if it brings in customers." "That's great," Jack said, meaning it. "What about Lily? Have you talked to her today?" Emily's face lit up. "Mrs. Rodriguez let me talk to her for almost an hour. She drew me a picture of a house with a big yard and a dog. Said it was for when Mama comes home." Her voice caught slightly. "I told her it might be sooner than she thinks." As Jack prepared to leave the next morning, he found himself hesitating by the door. Emily was already up, making coffee in his kitchen as if she belonged there. The sight stirred something in him that he'd thought was buried with Sarah. "I'll be back in 3 days," he said. "You've got my number if you need anything. Drive safely," Emily said. And for a moment, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Chapter 4. Finding Her Voice. The 3 days Jack was away transformed Emily's world in ways she hadn't expected. For the first time in months, she woke up without fear gnawing at her stomach, without the constant tension of wondering what mood would greet her each morning. Jack's house, with its quiet corners and gentle morning light, felt like a sanctuary she'd never dared to dream of. On her first full day alone, Emily explored Sierra Vista with the thoroughness of someone mapping out a new life. The town revealed itself to be larger than it had appeared from Jack's truck, with hidden pockets of activity and community that spoke of possibilities. She visited the cafe where she'd inquired about work, officially applied for the dishwashing position, and was hired on the spot when the owner, Carlos, learned she could start immediately. "You play that guitar you were carrying?" Carlos had asked, nodding toward the case she'd brought with her. "Yes," Emily replied, unsure where the conversation was heading. "Good. Saturday nights are dead around here. If you can bring in some customers with your music, there might be extra in it for you." Emily's heart had raced with excitement and terror in equal measure. It had been over a year since she'd performed for anyone other than Lily, and even longer since she'd played for strangers. But the opportunity felt like a door opening, and she wasn't about to let fear keep her from walking through it. That evening, she called Mrs. Rodriguez as she did every night, her fingers trembling as she dialed the familiar number. "Mama!" Lily's voice burst through the phone, bright and immediate. "Mrs. Rodriguez made empanadas today, and I helped. I got flour everywhere, but she said that means I was doing it right." Emily's chest tightened with love and longing. "That sounds wonderful, baby. Did you save me one?" "I drew you one instead," Lily said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Rodriguez said drawings last longer than food, and this way you can have it even when you're far away." "You're so smart," Emily whispered, fighting back tears. "I love you so much, Lily." "I love you too, Mama. When are you coming to get me?" "Mrs. Rodriguez is nice, but I miss singing with you before bed." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the familiar ache of separation. "Soon, sweetheart. Mama's working on it, okay? I'm gonna sing for people this weekend. Just like we practiced." "Really? Will you sing our song?" Emily smiled through her tears. Their song was a simple melody she'd written about a little girl who could paint the sky with her laughter. "Maybe I will. Would you like that?" "Yes. And Mama, when I come to live with you, can we get a dog? I drew us one in the picture of our new house. We'll see, baby. We'll see." After hanging up, Emily sat in Jack's living room, surrounded by the comfortable silence of a house that felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years. She picked up her guitar and began to play softly, letting her fingers find the melody of Lily's song. The notes seemed to fill the empty spaces around her, making the room feel less lonely and more full of possibility. The next morning brought her first day of work at the cafe. The job was simple but satisfying, clearing tables, washing dishes, and occasionally helping Carlos with food prep. But more importantly, it gave her a chance to observe the rhythms of the town, to see who came and went, to understand the community she was hoping to join. During her lunch break, she walked to the park where she'd first thought she'd be performing. In daylight, with people actually using it, the space looked more promising. A few children played on the small playground while parents watched from benches. An elderly man fed pigeons near a fountain. The acoustics were indeed good. She could hear conversations clearly from across the park. "You're new in town," a voice said behind her. Emily turned to find a woman about her age, with kind eyes and prematurely grey hair pulled back in a practical bun. "I'm Margaret," the woman continued. "I run the community center across the street. I've seen you walking around the past few days." "Emily," she replied, offering a cautious smile. "I just moved here from New Mexico." "Well, welcome to Sierra Vista. What brings you our way?" Emily considered how much to share. "Fresh start," she said simply. "I'm a musician, hoping to find some opportunities here." Margaret's face lit up with interest. "A musician? What kind of music?" "Folk, mostly. Some country. I play guitar and sing." "Perfect timing," Margaret said, her enthusiasm growing. We're planning a community talent show next month as a fundraiser for the children's after-school program. We could use someone with actual talent instead of just enthusiastic amateurs." Emily felt a flutter of excitement mixed with nervousness. "I'd be interested in hearing more about it. Why don't you stop by the center tomorrow? I'll show you around, introduce you to some people. This town needs more music in it." That evening, Emily found herself practicing in earnest for the first time in months. She worked through her repertoire, testing which songs felt right, which ones still carried too much emotional weight from her previous life. Some melodies brought back memories of better times with Lily's father, before things turned dark. Others reminded her of dreams she'd put aside for survival. But when she played Lily's song, everything felt right. The notes flowed naturally, and she could picture her daughter's face lighting up with joy. This was what she was fighting for, not just a career or financial security, but the right to share this gift with the world and, more importantly, with her little girl. On Friday, her phone rang unexpectedly. It was Jack, calling from somewhere in Nevada. "How are you settling in?" he asked, and Emily could hear genuine concern in his voice. "Better than I expected," she said honestly. "I got the job at the cafe, and I'm supposed to play there tomorrow night. Plus, I met a woman from the community center who wants me to participate in a talent show." "That's fantastic," Jack said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Sarah always said that good things happen when you're brave enough to let them." "How's your run going?" Emily asked, surprised by how much she wanted to keep him on the phone. "Same as always, but different somehow," Jack said cryptically. "I keep thinking about having someone to come home to. It's been a while since I felt that way." Emily's heart did something complicated in her chest. "Jack, I know it's too soon to say things like that," he said quickly. "I just wanted you to know that you're welcome to stay as long as you need. No pressure, no expectations, just you're welcome." After they hung up, Emily sat with the phone in her lap, processing the conversation. Jack's kindness continued to surprise her, but more than that, she was beginning to realize that her feelings for him were growing beyond gratitude. The thought both thrilled and terrified her. Saturday evening arrived with Emily's stomach full of butterflies. She'd spent the afternoon at the community center with Margaret, meeting people and learning about the town's various initiatives. The talent show was still 3 weeks away, but already she had a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. Now, standing outside the cafe with her guitar case, she took a deep breath and prepared to step back into the part of herself she'd almost forgotten existed. Through the window, she could see Carlos setting up a small area in the corner where she could perform. A few early diners had already arrived, and she noticed Margaret at a corner table, offering an encouraging wave. Emily pushed open the door, the familiar weight of her guitar case a comfort against her back. Tonight, she would find her voice again. Tonight, she would take another step toward bringing Lily home. Chapter 5. The Sound of Hope. The corner of Carlos's cafe had been transformed into an intimate performance space. A single spotlight, really just a repurposed table lamp, cast a warm glow over the small area where Emily would play. The usual dinner crowd had grown larger than typical for a Saturday evening, word having spread through the town's efficient grapevine that the new woman was going to perform. Emily tuned her guitar with fingers that trembled slightly, though whether from nerves or excitement, she couldn't say. The last time she'd performed for strangers felt like a lifetime ago, back when she still believed in fairy tale endings and happily ever after. Now, sitting in this small-town cafe with her battered guitar case open beside her, she felt like she was reclaiming something that had been stolen from her. "You ready, Mija?" Carlos asked softly, setting a glass of water beside her chair. Emily nodded, taking a deep breath that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her lungs. "As ready as I'll ever be." The conversations in the cafe gradually quieted as people realized the music was about to begin. Emily looked out at the small audience, maybe 20 people in total, and felt a familiar mix of vulnerability and power that came with holding a room's attention. "Good evening," she said into the microphone Carlos had borrowed from the community center. Her voice was clear but gentle, carrying the hint of nervousness that made her seem approachable rather than polished. "My name is Emily Parker, and I'm new to your beautiful town. I thought tonight we might share some music together." She started with a cover, a gentle folk song that most people would recognize. Her voice, rusty from months of singing only to Lily, warmed as she found her rhythm. By the second verse, she could see people relaxing into their chairs. Conversations completely ceased, all attention focused on the young woman with the guitar. Margaret beamed from her corner table, occasionally nodding encouragingly. A couple at the bar had turned their stools to face Emily directly. Even Carlos had stopped what he was doing in the kitchen to listen from the doorway. As Emily finished the first song to warm applause, she felt something unlock inside her chest. This was who she was meant to be, not the woman walking on eggshells, not the mother separated from her child, but simply Emily, sharing her gift with people who wanted to receive it. "This next song," she said, adjusting her guitar strap, "is about second chances, about believing that tomorrow might be different than yesterday." The melody that flowed from her guitar was her own composition, written during the dark months when she'd first realized she had to leave. The lyrics spoke of roads not taken, of courage found in desperate moments, of the way hope could surprise you when you least expected it. As she sang, Emily caught sight of movement near the cafe's entrance. Jack stood in the doorway, still in his travel clothes, his eyes fixed on her with an expression she couldn't quite read. He was supposed to be gone another day, but here he was, and the sight of him made her voice catch for just a moment before finding its strength again. When the song ended, the applause was more enthusiastic, and Emily realized that several people had moved closer during her performance. An elderly woman in the front row had tears in her eyes. "That was beautiful, dear," the woman said during the brief break between songs. "Did you write that yourself?" "I did," Emily replied, feeling a flush of pride she hadn't experienced in years. "Play another original," Margaret called from across the room. "We want to hear more of your music." Emily hesitated for just a moment, then made a decision that surprised even her. "This one is for my daughter, Lily, who's 4 years old and believes that music can paint pictures in the air." She fingered the opening chords of Lily's song, the melody she'd been humming in Jack's truck just days ago. The song that emerged was pure love set to music. Emily sang about a little girl who could make flowers bloom with her laughter, who saw rainbows in puddles and magic in everyday moments. Her voice carried all the longing of separation, all the fierce, protective love of motherhood, all the hope of reunion. When she finished, the silence in the cafe stretched for several heartbeats before erupting into the most enthusiastic applause of the evening. Emily looked up to find Jack still standing by the door, and now she could read his expression clearly. It was wonder, mixed with something that looked very much like falling in love. "One more," Carlos called from behind the bar. "The crowd's not ready to let you go yet." Emily smiled. Feeling more confident than she had in months, she launched into an upbeat folk song that had people tapping their feet and swaying in their chairs. By the end, several patrons were singing along with the chorus, and the cafe felt more like a community gathering than a restaurant. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, they stopped by Emily's corner to thank her, to ask when she'd perform again, to tell her how much they'd enjoyed the music. Margaret pressed a business card into her hand. "Call me Monday," she said. "I want to talk to you about more than just the talent show. This town needs you." Carlos counted out bills from the tip jar that had appeared mysteriously on Emily's guitar case. "That's more than I usually take in tips all weekend," he said, grinning. "You're definitely playing here again." As the last customer left, Emily began packing up her guitar, her hands steady now. Her heart full in a way it hadn't been in longer than she could remember. Jack approached slowly, as if he were afraid of breaking the spell that seemed to hang in the air. "That was incredible," he said simply. "I've never heard anything like that last song, the one about Lily. I wrote it for her when she was 2. Emily said, latching her guitar case. "I used to sing it to her every night before bed." "No wonder she misses singing with you," Jack said. "And when you sang that tonight, I felt like I could see her, this bright little spirit who loves her mama more than anything in the world." Emily's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears, tears of gratitude and possibility. "Thank you for saying that. And thank you for coming back early. I didn't expect. I couldn't stay away," Jack admitted. "I kept thinking about you performing tonight, and I realized I didn't want to miss it. I've never done anything like that before, cut a run short just to be somewhere for someone." They stood looking at each other in the nearly empty cafe, the weight of unspoken feelings heavy between them. Finally, Emily spoke. "Jack, I need you to know that I'm not looking for someone to save me. I'm learning to save myself. But having you believe in me, having you offer me a place to land while I figure things out, it means everything." "I'm not trying to save you," Jack said quietly. "I'm just trying to figure out how to be the kind of man who deserves to be part of your story." As they walked out of the cafe together into the cool desert night, Emily felt something she hadn't experienced in years, the sense that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. Tomorrow, she would call Lily and tell her about tonight. Tomorrow, she would start making concrete plans to bring her daughter home. Tonight, though, she would simply allow herself to feel proud of the woman she was becoming. Chapter 6. The Weight of Dreams. 2 weeks after Emily's first performance at the cafe, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and fragile. She worked her shifts washing dishes during the week and performed every Saturday night to increasingly larger crowds. Word about the talented newcomer had spread beyond Sierra Vista, and people drove from neighboring towns to hear her play. Jack had adjusted his routes to spend more time at home, something his dispatcher noticed but didn't question. After 15 years of Jack taking every available run, a request for a more predictable schedule was granted without hesitation. What Jack didn't tell anyone was that he found himself rushing through his deliveries, eager to return to a house that no longer felt empty. The morning light filtered through the kitchen windows as Emily prepared breakfast, humming softly while scrambling eggs. Jack sat at the table with his coffee, watching her move around the space that Sarah had once claimed as her own. Instead of feeling like a betrayal, it felt like the house was remembering how to be alive. "I talked to Lily for almost 2 hours last night," Emily said, setting a plate in front of him. "You're right, she started telling Mrs. Rodriguez that she's going to be a famous artist like her mama. Apparently, she's been drawing pictures of guitars and music notes." Jack smiled, fork halfway to his mouth. "Smart kid. She knows talent when she sees it." Emily's expression grew thoughtful as she sat down across from him. "Jack, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." The serious tone in her voice made Jack set down his fork entirely. What is it? How long can this arrangement really last? I mean, I'm grateful beyond words for everything you've done, but I can't live in your spare room forever. And I can't bring Lily here without knowing what this is between us, what it means." Jack had been dreading this conversation while simultaneously knowing it was inevitable. "What do you want it to mean?" he asked carefully. Emily ran her fingers through her hair. A gesture he'd learned meant she was struggling with something difficult. "I care about you, Jack, more than I should, probably, considering how recently I got out of a bad situation. But I also can't make decisions based on feelings alone anymore. I have to think about Lily, about stability, about what's best for her in the long run." "And you don't think I could be part of that?" Jack asked, trying to keep the hurt out of his voice. "I don't know," Emily said honestly. "You're a good man, maybe the best I've ever known, but you've been alone for 3 years, and I've been trying to escape a controlling relationship. Neither of us is exactly starting from a healthy place." Jack stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where neighbors were beginning their daily routines. "You're right," he said finally. "About all of it. I've been telling myself that what I feel for you is just, I don't know, gratitude for bringing life back into this house. But it's more than that. And maybe that's exactly the problem. Emily joined him at the window, standing close enough that he could smell the vanilla scent of her shampoo. "What if we tried something different?" she said. "What if we took some time to figure out who we are as individuals before we try to figure out who we might be together?" "What does that look like?" Jack asked. "I think I need to get my own place," Emily said, the words obviously difficult for her to say. "I've saved enough from the cafe tips and my wages to rent a small apartment. Nothing fancy, but something that's mine. And then maybe, if things work out, I can bring Lily here." Jack felt something twist in his chest. The house would feel empty again without Emily's presence, without her morning humming and evening guitar practice. But he also understood what she was saying, and he respected her for it. "There's a small apartment complex on Maple Street," he said. "The owner's a friend of mine. Good neighborhood, safe for kids." Emily turned to look at him, surprise in her eyes. "You're not angry?" "I'm disappointed," Jack admitted. "But I'm not angry. You're doing what you think is best for you and Lily, and I can't argue with that logic." That afternoon, they drove together to look at the apartment complex. The unit available was a modest 2-bedroom on the ground floor with a small patio that looked out onto a playground. It was clean, affordable, and exactly the kind of place where a little girl could feel safe and happy. "And it's perfect," Emily said, walking through the empty rooms and imagining them filled with furniture, with Lily's drawings on the refrigerator, with the sound of laughter and music. "When would you want to move in?" the landlord asked. Emily looked at Jack, then back at the apartment. "Next weekend." As they drove home in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts, Emily's phone rang. It was Mrs. Rodriguez, calling earlier than usual. "Emily." "Mija." The older woman's voice was tight with concern. "I need to tell you something. Lily's father came by today asking questions about where you went. I didn't tell him anything, but he seemed agitated, more than usual." Emily felt ice form in her veins. "What kind of questions?" "He wanted to know if I'd heard from you, if I knew where you were staying. I told him I hadn't heard anything, but I don't think he believed me." "Emily, I'm worried. Maybe it's time to think about getting Lily out of here." Emily's hands shook as she held the phone. "Is she safe? Is Lily okay?" "She's fine. She's at the neighbors playing with their daughter. But Emily, I think you need to make some decisions quickly." After ending the call, Emily sat in Jack's truck, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Everything had been going so well. Too well, perhaps. She should have known that her ex wouldn't just let them disappear without trying to assert his control. "What's wrong?" Jack asked, pulling over to the side of the road. Emily told him about the phone call, watching his expression grow increasingly serious. "I have to go get her," she said when she finished. "I can't wait anymore. If he's starting to ask questions, it's only a matter of time before he figures out how to find us." Jack was quiet for a long moment, his hands gripping the steering wheel. Finally, he turned to her. "We should go together." "Jack, no. This isn't your problem." "Like hell it isn't," he said firmly. "You think I'm going to let you drive back there alone to face someone who's been making your life miserable? Think again." Emily felt tears well up in her eyes. "It could be dangerous. If he finds out about you, about us, then we'll deal with it together," Jack said. "Emily, I know you said you need time to figure things out on your own, and I respect that, but this is different. This is about keeping you and Lily safe." That evening, as they planned the trip to Villa Grove, Emily realized that her feelings for Jack had nothing to do with gratitude or loneliness. Watching him methodically check his truck, plan the safest route, and prepare for whatever they might encounter, she understood that what she felt was love. Complicated, inconvenient, and absolutely real. "Jack," she said, as they sat at his kitchen table with maps and phone numbers spread between them. Yeah? When this is over, when Lily is safe and we're back here, I want to try. I want to see what we could be together. Jack looked up from the map he'd been studying, hope and determination warring in his expression. You sure about that? I'm sure, Emily said. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Outside, the desert wind picked up, rattling the windows and reminding them both that some storms couldn't be avoided. They could only be weathered together. Chapter 7. Coming Home. The drive to Villa Grove felt endless, even though it only took 4 hours. Emily sat in the passenger seat of Jack's truck, alternating between checking her phone and staring out at the familiar landscape that she'd hoped never to see again. Every mile brought back memories she'd worked hard to bury, but also brought her closer to Lily. We'll be in and out quickly, Jack said for the 3rd time, his voice steady and reassuring. Mrs. Rodriguez has everything packed. We pick up Lily, grab her things, and head straight back. Emily nodded, though her stomach remained tied in knots. What if he's there? What if he's been watching Mrs. Rodriguez's house? Then we deal with it, Jack said simply. But Emily, you can't live your life afraid of what might happen. Lily needs her mama, and she needs her mama to be brave. The truth of his words settled over Emily like a warm blanket. She had been brave, braver than she'd ever imagined she could be. She'd left everything behind, built a new life from nothing, and found her voice again. Now she just had to take the final step. Villa Grove looked smaller than Emily remembered, more run down and desperate. The contrast with Sierra Vista was stark. Where her new home felt full of possibility, this place seemed trapped in its own limitations. As they pulled up to Mrs. Rodriguez's modest house, Emily could see a small face pressed against the front window. "Mama!" Lily's voice carried across the yard before Emily had even gotten out of the truck. The little girl burst through the front door and ran straight into her mother's arms, nearly knocking Emily over with the force of her enthusiasm. "Oh, my baby," Emily whispered, holding her daughter tight and breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. "I missed you so much." "I knew you'd come back," Lily said matter-of-factly. "I drew you pictures every day so you wouldn't forget what I look like." Emily laughed through her tears. "I could never forget what you look like, sweetheart. Never." Mrs. Rodriguez emerged from the house carrying 2 small suitcases and a worn stuffed elephant that Emily recognized as Lily's most prized possession. "Everything's here," the older woman said, but her eyes were watchful, scanning the street. "You should go quickly, Mija. He was here again this morning, asking more questions." Emily's blood chilled. "This morning? Did he see you packing?" "I don't think so, but I can't be sure. I told the neighbors to call me if they saw his truck again." Mrs. Rodriguez handed Emily a piece of paper. "That's my sister's number in Phoenix. If you ever need anything, you call her." Emily hugged the woman who had kept her daughter safe. "I don't know how to thank you. You already have, by being brave enough to make a better life. Now go, before..." The sound of a truck engine made them all freeze. Emily's ex-boyfriend's familiar pickup turned the corner at the end of the street, moving slowly as if searching for something. Emily's heart hammered against her ribs. "Get in the truck," Jack said quietly, his voice carrying an authority Emily had never heard before. "Now!" Emily swept Lily into her arms and moved quickly toward Jack's truck, but it was too late. The pickup had spotted them and was accelerating down the street. Emily could see Marcus behind the wheel, his face twisted with the familiar anger that had made her life hell for so long. "Emily!" Marcus's voice boomed across the neighborhood as he slammed out of his truck. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Jack stepped between Marcus and Emily, his posture calm but unmistakably protective. "I think she's taking her daughter home," he said evenly. Marcus looked Jack up and down with obvious contempt. "And who the hell are you supposed to be?" "Her new boyfriend," he laughed bitterly. Emily, you always did have a thing for strays." "Don't," Emily said, finding her voice. "Don't you dare talk about him like that." "I'll talk however I want," Marcus snarled, stepping closer. "You think you can just take my kid and disappear? Think again." "She's not your kid," Emily said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You signed away your rights when you walked out last year. You have no claim to her. No right to interfere in our lives." Marcus's face darkened dangerously. "That was temporary. I changed my mind." "It doesn't work that way," Jack said, his voice still calm but with steel underneath. "Legal decisions aren't dependent on your mood swings." "Nobody asked you, old man," Marcus snapped, but Emily could see uncertainty creeping into his expression. Jack was bigger than him, older but clearly stronger. And he radiated the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of handling difficult situations. "Actually," Emily said, stepping up beside Jack with Lily still in her arms, I asked him to help me build a life where my daughter can feel safe and loved. I asked him to be part of something better than what we had here." Lily, who had been silent during the confrontation, suddenly spoke up. "Are you the mean man Mama told Mrs. Rodriguez about?" The innocent question seemed to deflate some of Marcus's anger. He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, for the first time since arriving. Emily could see him taking in Lily's bright eyes, her confident posture, the way she clung to her mother without fear. "She looks happy," Marcus said quietly. And for a moment, Emily saw a glimpse of the man she'd once thought she loved. "She is happy," Emily replied. "We both are." "Marcus, you can be angry with me, but don't take that away from her. Don't make her life smaller because you can't let go." Marcus stood silent for a long moment, his hands clenched at his sides. Finally, he looked directly at Emily. "You really think this is better, running away with some stranger?" "I think choosing hope over fear is always better," Emily said. "And Jack isn't a stranger. He's the man who stopped when I needed help, who gave me a place to heal, who believes in my dreams. He's the man who drove 4 hours to make sure Lily and I could be together safely." Marcus glanced between Emily and Jack, then at Lily, who was watching the adults with the solemn attention children give to important moments they don't fully understand. "If I ever hear that he's hurt either of you," Marcus said finally, "I'll come looking." "You won't hear that," Jack said simply, "because it won't happen." Marcus nodded once, climbed back into his truck and drove away without another word. The silence that followed felt enormous. Emily realized she was shaking, but not from fear, from relief, from the sudden understanding that this chapter of her life was truly closed. "Is that man gone now, Mama?" Lily asked. "Yes, baby, he's gone." "Good," Lily said matter-of-factly. "I like Jack better. He has kind eyes." Jack laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "I like you too." "Miss Lily, your mama's told me a lot about you." "She has?" Lily's face lit up with interest. "Did she tell you I'm an artist?" "She did. I was hoping you might draw me something for my house." "Your house is Mama's house too now, right?" Emily and Jack exchanged glances over Lily's head. "Well," Emily said carefully, "Mama and I are going to have our own apartment, but Jack will still be our very good friend." Lily considered this seriously. "But can we visit him lots?" "Every day, if you want," Jack said, and Emily felt her heart do something complicated and wonderful in her chest. 3 months later, Emily stood on the small stage at Sierra Vista's community center, looking out at a packed auditorium. The talent show had grown beyond anyone's expectations, drawing people from 3 counties. Lily sat in the front row between Jack and Margaret, holding a sign she'd made that read, "My mama is the best singer in the world," in rainbow letters. Emily had performed at the cafe every weekend since moving into her apartment, building a following that amazed everyone, including herself. Tonight, though, felt different. Tonight felt like a celebration of everything she'd overcome and everything she'd built. This last song, she said into the microphone, is for everyone who's ever had to choose between staying comfortable and chasing their dreams. For everyone who's learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone you love is to become the person you were meant to be. She began to play a new song, one she'd written just the week before. It was about second chances and unexpected kindness, about the way love could surprise you when you stopped looking for it, about the courage it took to build a family from broken pieces. As she sang, Emily caught sight of Jack in the audience, his eyes shining with pride and something deeper. After the show, she knew he would walk her and Lily home to their apartment, where Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator and music filled the rooms every evening. He would kiss Emily goodnight on the doorstep like he had every evening for the past month, patient and gentle and constant. Tomorrow, Emily would start her new job at the community center, coordinating music programs for children. Lily would start preschool, where she'd already made friends with half the class. Jack would continue his trucking routes, but shorter ones now, ones that brought him home every few days to a life that included Saturday morning pancakes and bedtime stories and the sound of laughter echoing through rooms that had been quiet too long. Tonight, though, Emily simply sang, her voice carrying across the auditorium and beyond, carrying the message that sometimes the road you never intended to travel leads exactly where you need to go. Fim da Historia. Dear listeners, we hope Emily, Jack, and Lily's story has touched your hearts. To continue this emotional journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of life. Don't miss our upcoming content. We're waiting for you in the comments.